Chapter 11. The Witch. The icy wind bit at Lilith's skin as she descended the snowy mountain trail. Her dark, jagged wings folded tightly against her back, shielding her from the chill. She placed a hand lightly on her abdomen, a faint, almost imperceptible movement that hinted at a growing awareness within her. Each step was deliberate, her ember-like glowing eyes fixed on the path ahead, yet her thoughts lingered on the changes she could no longer ignore. The faint hum of the next church in the distance was disrupted by a sudden ripple in the air. The ground trembled faintly as a figure materialized ahead of her. Bael, his towering form shrouded in dark, flickering shadows, stepped forward with his signature guttural chuckle. His sharp crimson eyes scanned Lilith, narrowing as if weighing her resolve. His posture was relaxed yet imposing, one clawed hand resting on the hilt of his curved blade, while the other gestured lazily, betraying an undercurrent of calculated menace. "Lilith," he began, his voice carrying a mixture of amusement and caution, "you are on a warpath. Not sure how much longer they will put up with you." He paused, his crimson eyes narrowing as he noticed her hand resting on her belly. "Ah, but it appears it's not about you anymore." Lilith's gaze sharpened, and she removed her hand. "It's not what you think," she said coolly. Bael smirked, though his tone grew more serious. "Regardless, if you're going to continue this madness, you'll need guidance. Head back to the swamp and find the witch." Lilith's expression hardened. "I was going that way anyway," she replied, her voice sharp. "The next church lies beyond it." Bael inclined his head slightly, his smirk returning. "Then I suggest you survive the swamp first," he said before dissolving into shadow. The swamp greeted Lilith with a suffocating humidity that clung to her skin, thick with the earthy scent of decay and the tang of stagnant water. The croaks of unseen frogs echoed like a discordant chorus, mingling with the distant chirps of crickets and the occasional splash of unseen creatures. The dense underbrush rustled with life, hinting at the presence of creatures slithering or scuttling just out of sight. The murky water glistened faintly under a pale, sickly light that filtered through the twisted canopy above. Strange, elongated insects hovered just above the water's surface, their translucent wings catching the faint light. Every step was deliberate, her boots sinking slightly into the damp, spongy ground. The smell of decay and damp earth filled the air, mingling with an inexplicable metallic tang that seemed to grow stronger as she moved deeper into the swamp. Lilith paused as a faint glow caught her attention. A translucent figure, barely more than a wisp of light, appeared ahead of her. It hovered for a moment before disappearing, only to reappear a few steps further along the path. Lilith followed, her ember-like eyes narrowing as she watched the ghostly figure guide her deeper into the swamp. The faint sounds of the swamp faded as she approached a small clearing. At its center stood a hut, its walls made from tightly woven reeds and covered in thick layers of swamp moss. Trinkets hung from every available surface, bones, feathers, and shells, each bearing strange carvings or intricate designs that hinted at rituals long forgotten. They swayed gently in the humid breeze, creating an eerie symphony of clicks and whispers, as if carrying the remnants of chants and invocations once uttered within the swamp. The faint glow of the ghost disappeared as Lilith stepped closer. The door creaked open, and a figure emerged. The witch was tall and gaunt, her skin a deep ashen gray that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. Her hair, a wild tangle of black and silver, was adorned with beads and charms that clinked softly as she moved. She wore layers of tattered cloth, dyed in earthy tones, and her fingers, long and bony, clutched a staff adorned with feathers and glowing runes. Her crimson eyes, sharp and knowing, locked onto Lilith immediately. "You bring the swamp restless spirits," the witch said, her voice a low, melodic hum that carried an edge of warning. "What is it you seek, Lilith?" The witch's sharp eyes drifted downward, noticing Lilith's hand resting on her belly. Her lips curled into a knowing smile. "Ah," the witch said softly, her voice laced with intrigue. "I see. Come in, come in." Lilith hesitated for a moment but stepped inside the hut. The interior was as chaotic as the exterior, with dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, jars filled with unidentifiable substances lining the shelves, and a fire crackling at the center. The witch gestured toward a seat made of woven reeds and moss. You carry the future, the witch said, her voice reverent yet foreboding. She turned to a shelf, pulling down a wooden bowl filled with a thick, foamy liquid that bubbled ominously. She handed it to Lilith, her crimson eyes gleaming. Drink this, it will protect you. Lilith eyed the concoction warily, the foul smell making her nose wrinkle. What is it? She asked, her voice cold. The witch chuckled softly. A gift for you and what grows within. Drink, Lilith. Reluctantly, Lilith lifted the bowl to her lips and drank. The liquid was thick and bitter, the taste clinging to her throat. Almost instantly, a sharp pain stabbed through her belly and her vision blurred. Her head swirled as the room spun around her. She staggered, clutching her abdomen, as the witch's laughter echoed in her ears. Oh, it was too easy, the witch cackled, her voice filled with malicious glee. Lilith collapsed to her knees, her strength fading as the witch dragged her outside. The swamp air was heavy and oppressive as the witch tied Lilith's arms to two wooden poles, securing her in place. The witch's laughter filled the clearing as she began to monologue, her voice dripping with triumph. Do you know how much you're worth right now, Lilith? Do you even understand the power you carry? Oh, they'll pay dearly for you. Lilith's vision flickered, her consciousness slipping in and out as the witch's chanting grew louder. The rhythmic tribal chant filled the swamp, each word sharp and guttural, resonating with a primal energy that seemed to pull at the very air. The words blended into a haunting melody, their cadence rising and falling like a wave. Every syllable carried weight, vibrating through the thick air and shaking the very ground beneath them, as if summoning a force beyond comprehension. The rhythmic tribal chant filled the swamp, each word vibrating through the thick air. The sky above darkened, and then, with a deafening roar, a blast of light erupted from the heavens, illuminating the swamp in an otherworldly glow. Lilith's blurred vision caught the outline of a figure descending from the light. A radiant archangel, his form glowing with divine energy as he landed atop the poles, holding her captive. The witch stepped back, her hands raised in reverence, as the archangel's piercing eyes locked onto Lilith.